Hi, Nick Vince here, and welcome to the Chattering Hour with my guest, award-winning writer, producer, and director, Kevin Lewis. Over the past 2 decades, Kevin has worked with an amazing roster of stars such as Sean Patrick Flannery, Robert Forster, Nicolas Cage, Meg Foster, and Mina Savari. We talk about those and much more up next on the Chattering Hour with Kevin Lewis. And we're back with my special guest, Kevin Lewis. Last year, Kevin released Willy's Wonderland, which starred Nicolas Cage, and it's just a fun horror movie. We talk about that and the film he's just finished filming with Meg Foster, The Accursed. So let's get to it. Were you born in Denver, Colorado, or just brought up there?
No, actually, I was born in the Philippines on Clark Air Force Base. I was the first American baby to be born there. My dad was serving in the Army, so for the Vietnam War.
Right. Oh, yeah, so you're like me. You were born outside the country. I was born in Germany. I'm in London. I grew up in England, but yeah, I was born in Germany. Similar reasons, RAF. Yeah. How long did you stay over there, or did you?
For about a year or so, and then we moved, to Colorado. So
Right.
about when I was 2.
Right. And so, what was an average day feel like for you as a kid? What sort of thing did you get up to?
I mean, I loved comic books, and cartoons, and I was always into fantasy and stories and fiction since I was a little boy, so.
What comics were you reading?
I loved Spider-Man. He was my favorite. So I was a Marvel kid. And I loved also the horror comics, all the eerie, magazines and things like that. I mean, just I loved all that. I loved the artists. I loved Frank Frazetta. Even when I was a little kid, I just marveled at his artwork. And I loved John Carter Mars and the Edgar Rice Burroughs Tarzan, all that stuff. Even when I was really small, I just the artwork captivated me, and then of course I loved the Spider-Man cartoon, the 60s trippy Spider-Man cartoon. It was great. I think Ralph Bakshi did some of the animation in it. It's great.
Yeah, that is always that. Yeah, that is a great deal of fun. So, were you watching films as a kid, or?
Yeah, I mean, as most kids, growing up in the 80s, when I was born in the 70s, Jaws and Star Wars, but really it was Star Wars. I was 6 and I saw that in the theater for my first time. And of course, it just changed my life like so many others. And, it's funny, Star Wars, I thought was like handed down by God. I thought like it was just, here it is. Right. And I never really understood the making of it from behind the scenes and stuff. When I really started getting into movies was like when I saw Raiders Lost Ark, and I realized what a director did, with Spielberg and the cutting and the framing and the pacing and things like that. That's when I really started realizing behind the scenes on how to start making movies. Yeah, Star Wars and some of the horror movies of the 70s. I remember Burnt Offerings was one of my, it scared the living Jesus out of me as a little kid. I mean, it was a TV movie, but it was just, I was captivated by that. Of course, The Omen, The Exorcist, all those great films.
Right. And so, was that your kind of inspiration for becoming a film director?
Yeah. Like I said, I've always loved stories, and I think of the idea of some things happened to me in my life. My dad left, when I was younger, and my mom got in this car accident. She got in this hit and run car accident, lost her face wiped clean off, lost her left eye. Yeah, man-made built face. She's had over 60 some surgery. She's going to be 91 in January. She lives with me now with my family. And so things like that, Nick, I think not be able to control what happens to you as a kid, these traumatic experiences, made me want to control what happens in a story, and made me want to write and direct. And these characters live or die, and he's doing these adventures and this and that. So I think that had a lot to do with it, and I could have probably gone into, down the road, maybe, gone into some things that were very negative for me, i.e. drugs or things like that. But I always stuck to fiction, comic books, stories, movies. Those were my escapism. That was my holy church, if you say, I would just go and I would lose myself. And so those stories and characters and things helped me, I think, just, get through life, I had to grow up fast, because when my mom got in that car accident, things like that, I became the man of the house. And so, but yes, I've always been in fiction. I wrote a sequel called Destiny of the Jedi for Star Wars before Return of the Jedi came out. I remember in like 5th grade, and it's just that, always just writing and reading and going, making home movies on Super 8 cameras, and then of course VHS cameras down the road. I was just my passion. I would always take my action figures and fly them into my mom's plants and act like they were planets, and just, it's just, I just love it. I always loved it, so.
Right. What were some of your earliest film, homemade films in that case?
Oh gosh, we did little horror movies. I did a thing on Montana Monty. It was like an Indiana Jones type thing. It's kind of cool. We did, as I got a little older, we did a movie called Real World, REEL World, and it was like a take on After Hours, kind of like this guy gets spun into this movie, and it was cool. We had a party at the house and charged admission, and I had like the cartoons and the, let's go to the lobby in front of it, and we had all these people come, and that was pretty cool. That was fun. All going with my friends and going around Denver, just shooting and stuff like that. And just, it was great creating.
How old were you then?
That was when I was like nearing high school. When I was younger, we would go out with a Super 8 camera and do all kinds of movies. A stuffed animal, I would take stuffed animals and have them coming to life and things like that in the basement, and just all experimental stuff, just, yeah, all kinds of fun stuff. Stop motion things, love stop motion animation.
That takes, I mean, stop motion animation takes a lot of patience. Was that something that you regard as one of your strengths, or?
What's funny? I don't feel I have a lot of patience in my personal life sometimes. Actually, as you get older, you learn that you've got to realize you have to surrender yourself. And it's like, yes. But when it comes to filmmaking, I do. It's funny because I'm not a detailed oriented person either. My wife will tell you that, but when it comes to filmmaking, I am. So it's like all of that. It's just, when it comes to making movies and stories and things, I pour 110% of everything I have,
Right.
and it's like you are acting like another character too as a director, right? Because it's like you're living with this movie or story for a while, then you're gone, you're on to the next thing and things like that. So it kind of consumes you, just like when you hear actors say, oh, that part, kind of consumed me. And I was doing that. I totally understand, because the project, it's, you got to do it, for me, for the love of it. It's just too hard. It takes a piece of your soul every film you make, in my opinion, if you really care. I'm not a guy that just goes out and wants to shoot something and just, I know it's craft. I get it. It is craft, but I definitely think, there's an artistic merit to it. I know that art is things that I think that stand the test of time. It's really what really art is. If we're talking about something 10 years from now, or 20, HELLRAISER,
Mhm.
art, right? I mean, still talking about it, still huge, right?
Yeah.
So, but then there's also, I understand craft, and I understand that there's people in it to make money and things like that, but I'm not. I love making movies. I love telling stories. I love taking people and putting them on adventures and losing themselves, like I did as a kid, and for me, if there's a kid out there to see one of my films like Willy's Wonderland or this movie I'm working on now that makes them want to make movies, that to me is the ultimate gift and treasure.
Right, right, right. So how did these films that you were making when you're in your teens lead to going to University of South California?
So that's cool. I made a film, and I got a scholarship from KCNC, which is like the NBC affiliate in Colorado, in Denver. And so I got a scholarship, and then I got into USC in that, and showed them the film I did, and so I went in and I started making smaller movies at SC in the film school and stuff like that. And actually, a really cool story is I made a short film called Face the Music. It was like a riff on Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, and the lab messed up my film. That was Super 16 for my student project, and I was interning for John McTiernan and Donna Dubrow at the time. And anyways, they were amazing. You know, Donna, she wrote me a check, and I went and remade that film from scratch. Brought everybody back from school and the actors and rehearsed and whatever. And that, Nick, that was taxing. You know, could you imagine doing something, pouring everything you have, and then it just comes out, and then you go back and you redo everything. And but that, again, patience, and that really taught me a lot. You know, that it's like you want something, you have to go for it. You have to pour 110%. You know, so that was pretty cool. I basically did that movie twice, but. So yeah, on my little films, I wrote essays, and I loved SC. You know, I had a great time at that school. Met a lot of great people and friends, and they were just very supportive with going out and having your voice heard. You know.
Yeah, there's a very interesting phrase, isn't it? Having your voice heard. Do you? I suppose I want to drill down on that a little bit, because I know what that means to me. Because I remember I gave up acting after I'd done NIGHTBREED because I wanted to take up writing, because I remember telling my agent at the time, I want my voice to be heard. What does it mean to you in terms of having your voice heard?
You know, I just think it's kind of write what you know, and create what you know. And so, and I told my daughter this, because my daughter's into writing and photography and things. And I said, Caitlin, write what you know, do what you know, come from where you come from, because that to me is the honest truth. Yes, you can make a horror story, you can make it's fictional and all that stuff, but if you can take elements, like this film that I'm working on right now, I took elements. I'm taking care of my mother. She's going to be 91. I'm taking elements of that, and I'm heightening it. I'm distorting maybe reality on it, but I'm writing, I'm directing, I'm making this movie what I know. I know there's these things, and so to get to the truth of it, to make it honest, and that's what I'm very excited about this film that I'm doing, because I feel like it's a throwback to the 70s of the Rosemary's Babies and the Changeling, where horror movies were very grounded, and it was scary. That to me is what real horror is, right? It's like the truth is scary, and yes, you could do phantasmic worlds and VFX and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, it's the human heart, and it's the human mind. And so that's what makes me excited. And my first movie was kind of a drama, a little bit of action too. It was really a drama, and I like the human condition. I'm fascinated by it. I loved always psychology and what makes people tick and why they say things. What makes them do the things they do. And my feeling is, for us as humans, it's like, why are we here on this planet? At the end of the day, why are we here? What is my purpose? So yeah, allowing your voice to be heard has all that wrapped up into it, right? So you take your honest, your life and the truth, and yes, okay, you can wrap it up into something, again, fantastic. I mean, Edward Scissorhands, a great example, right? I mean, that's a movie. Okay, guy has, I remember hearing the pitch for it, and I was like, oh my gosh, Tim Burton directing a boy with scissors for hand, what? But then you realize it's about, isolation, and how we all feel as a kid, like maybe the kid who gets picked on at school or doesn't have many friends is the outcast, because Tim Burton, that's his themes, runs through his movies, right? The outcast. And so you have that, and Tim Burton felt that, when you read up about his background and how he felt he had to move to suburbia and things like that, and he was the weird kid, and that's what Edward Scissorhands is about, right? The weird kid, so that's what I think is what's fascinating, and what great movies and great art is. It really touches the human soul, so.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that, because that's a really great explanation as to why that phrase, write what you know,
Yeah.
what you know, can actually
Yeah.
be taken the wrong way, in
Yeah.
that it's, if you are a pastry chef or whatever, you can only write about being a pastry chef, and that's not what that phrase is talking about. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean write about your every day to day. It means about your understanding. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And you mentioned your first film, so this is The Method.
Yes.
How did that come about? Because you co-wrote and directed that.
Yes. So I came up with the idea. It was like 2 in the morning, and it just hit me, the whole story. And again, I love dramas, and I just the idea of actors putting on a play about a bank robbery, and to get into character, they go rob a bank. Now you have to remember that was the time when Quentin Tarantino burst on the scene. So everybody's doing these Quentin Tarantino kind of, I don't say rip-offs, but maybe homage or whatever. But they're all these different movies. And so what happened was, this film that I had, everybody started trying to steer it towards that, and it really never was, and it was more of just this drama about kids. I was in college, and that's what it was going about. Again, write what you know about the things in college and what you're dealing with, and going on to the world on your own and things like that. So, but it was really cool. I wrote that script, and Sean Patrick Flannery, he read it, and he was doing Young Indie at the time, and he wanted to do it. He really helped out. God bless him. He really helped my career on that, because he signed on to that movie. We got other people, and I shot that movie in like 12 days on 35 millimeter. Panavision gave us a camera for free. Disney gave us post production. It was big borrow and stole, man, on that movie. But it taught me a lot. And we went to Slam Dance that year, that following year. So yeah.
Right. For those people who don't know, can perhaps you explain a little about what slam dance is and what that.
So Slam Dance is a kind of an offshoot of Sundance, and it was started basically with movies that didn't get into Sundance. These guys created Slam Dance, and what was interesting was that year it was the Day Trippers came out, and Soderbergh came, and he premiered Day Trippers there because I believe Day Trippers did not get accepted to Sundance, and so he put kind of Slam Dance on the map because he was the Sundance kid, and he shows up now at Slam Dance and shows his movie. So that was really great times. They had a movie called Lowball there. So many interesting films that year. And I believe the following year, Christopher Nolan's The Following was there, and Swingers, or Swingers got picked up that year. Didn't make Slam Dance. I don't know, but there's something there. But Slam Dance, so many great movies have come out of Slam Dance. But
Right.
I think that was like the second year it was out. So
Right. Cool. So then you went on to do Downward Angel. Can you tell me a
yeah.
little about that?
So I made this movie. It was like a cool little action movie. Matt Schultz, who was an unknown at the time, and what was cool about that was when I was cutting it, we cut a promo together for him because he was testing for Fast and Furious, and he showed them, and I guess he auditioned for that, and he got the part, which is great. And so he went on to a really good career. But we did Downward Angel. We sold it to Blockbuster Video at the time. It was kind of cool. A Hollywood Reporter came out with the Killer Bees, and it had like this William Hurt Contaminated Man poster behind the owner, the CEO of Blockbuster, and had my movie Downward Angel, and they bought it outright and put it in the stores and stuff like that. And that was pretty cool, at the time, because Blockbuster was the thing, right? So that was a lot of fun. Work with Jonathan Banks, amazing, and so happy to see him with Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and people really seeing his talent. And he was great on that movie. And it was a fun action movie. I had a good time doing it. At that time, again, it was in the 90s and the early 2000s, like action movies were really popular there, right? Everybody, the foreign markets wanted action, everything action. So that's what we kind of did.
What, because you talked about the importance of human beings and
Yeah.
human beings telling stories, etc. So how do you translate that into action? Is there a
Well, yeah, I mean, that movie was about a man to me who was trying to find his place in the world. He was trying to figure it out. So yes, he was an assassin. Again, he's wrapped up in that thing. That's the dressing, right? That's kind of the ornaments, but that's the ornaments on the tree, but what's the real tree? The tree is the foundation, right? The foundation is he's a guy who's trying to find his place in the world, and he does it. He's kind of questioning himself. He's talking. He's a religious man. He's figuring out why is he doing this. So that to me was interesting. That's what drove me to make that movie. Just like with the method about guys, trying to be somebody they're not, and letting rage and anger take control of them and living in a fantasy world, because they were doing plays about this bank robbery and things like that, and they kind of got into character and things like that, like the movies, but it didn't turn out like the movies, right? There's real life and death tragedy. So yeah, those are the themes that really resonated with me in making those films.
Right, right, right. What do you find most challenging about directing? If you look back at some of your films, what do you?
Um, well, I believe the directors, he's the captain of the ship. She's the captain of the ship. The idea of everybody pushing towards a vision, and they're trying to get everybody to get on that boat to cruise to that vision, right? And so you have to be, I say, a salesman, but you have to get people to believe in what you're trying to achieve, right? And so that, for me, because I feel if you're passionate and you really care about something, that comes technical, if you get the right people around you and the right people. For me, I mean, honestly, being an artist in this day and age, or a filmmaker, and also a businessman, doing independent films and knowing how these movies work and who makes the money. Because Nick, I've done so many movies that the producers, they either, they got ripped off or they ripped it off. I mean, I've seen it all on a lot of these things, and that's probably the hardest thing, is art and commerce.
Yeah,
They have to, it's the movie business. It's a business. And anyone tells you it's not, that they're lying, because that's really what it is. And kind of seeing people's really true selves of like who they are. It's like, oh, wow, I thought they were really into this, but really it's just about the money or the fame or the this or that, So I think one of the hardest things for me too, and I had this one of my first movies, I feel like it's really odd, because I'm sure you feel this a lot. It's like when you make a film, it's like you're a family and you go through this family experience, and you love these people, right? And it's like, and then it's over, and then everyone goes off and does their thing, and you may see them, you may not, you may talk. I find that hard. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm a very sentimental guy. Um, and I'm a nostalgic kind of guy. And I always said, if I could take a chip out of my brain, I feel like sometimes I wish I could take the nostalgia out, because I agree. Sometimes you get mired in the past, and then you're not working in the present, and definitely not the future. And so I get kind of sometimes mired in the past. I'll pick up a comic book and I'll be like, oh, I was 10 and I remember reading this at the 7-Eleven and blah, 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 blah. And on my mind, right? And it's like, man, live now, So that's kind of tough for me. You work with great people and you do this wonderful thing together. It's like, putting up it's like the Amish, and they help each other build a home, that's kind of what it is. Right. And then you go off and you go your separate ways, and it's just like, wow, we did this amazing thing, which is great. And you're so connected with these people. And that's why, separating the emotion out of filmmaking is very hard. Like I said, it is business, but it's that tug of war, man, because you read a script or you write a script. It's like, oh, I love this. I'll do anything for this. And it's like, people read that and see that on you. And they're like, oh, I could take advantage of him or her. I can do this to them. I could do that. That's difficult. That is difficult. And, having, and, getting back to the kid in you of why you want to make movies, and why, one of my most thrilling things was I made Willy's Wonderland, and my kids, I've got 4, but 2 of them are in high school, and I got 2, and then I have 2 little boys who are 5 and 7, but the 2 in high school, they had like a watch party, because it was during COVID, with their friends. It was like 30 people online. They were watching the movie. And Nick, that was so exciting for me, because yes, we weren't in the movie theater, and we, couldn't do as COVID or whatever, but they were there and they were with their friends and they were all enjoying the experience. And that was like, that's why I want to make movies. And that's why I want to make fun movies and horror movies and genre movies, exciting movies, because of that. When I saw that, it was like, yes, I'm doing the right thing. So,
right. Okay, well, let take you back a
I'm
bit.
sorry, jumping everywhere.
No. That's usually my job. I usually jump around all over the place. Dark Heart, 2006. Now,
yeah,
I'd not had a chance to watch it, but
yeah.
looking at the trailer and reading about it, it looks very intense. What was the inspiration for this?
So Dark Heart is really who I am. I'm a guy who, again, I love the drama. And Dark Heart is an ode to like the Sam Peckinpah movies of the past, a very grounded film. It's funny. I did a film, and this is kind of a really cool story. I did a movie called Malibu Spring Break. It was for Crown International, and they did all the TNA movies back in the '80s, My Tutor and things like that. And I wrote it like in 2 days. I shot it in 9. I mean, it was, but it was a gig, and to me, it's like, hey, you learn every time you make a film and whatever. And what's cool about that is everyone, you can look at Malibu. Oh, I remember I had an agent at the time, so you can't do Malibu Spring Break. You can't do these movies. What you pass on defines your career. But when I made that movie, there was an actor named Jeremy Daniel Davis, and he got a little part. And I talked to him. I said, "Hey, I'm going to promise you, we're going to do a improv and for one of your scenes." And I was running behind schedule like you always do, 9 days, right? And I said, "Nope, we're gonna do." And he's like, "No, we don't have to do it." And the producers were, "Hurry up, hurry up." I was like, "No, we're gonna do your part. We're gonna do your part." And we did, and it was fun. We got that done. And he never forgot that. And so he is the producer of Willy's Wonderland, and he is the one that brought me the script because he remembered. He said that act of kindness that I did or whatever. I told him, I gave him my word, and we would do it, and we did. And I made Willy's Wonderland. I would never have done Willy's Wonderland without Malibu Spring Break. And that is just crazy to think, right? And I've got
Right.
my son telling me you did a soft core porn, and all my friends, it's like, no, guy, no, son. These are TNA movies back in the day. They were '80s TNA movies. Now it's a whole different ball game. But it was a light movie. So back to Dark Heart. Dark Heart was kind of me shedding that skin, because Malibu Spring Break is not me. I did it as a gig. I admit it. I'm sorry. I had to make money. I had my son. It's like I got offered the job. I took it. Dark Heart was a personal project for me because I was like, this is who I really am. And so Dark Heart is a movie about, like I said, my dad was in the military. He was a lieutenant colonel, special forces, Green Beret. And the movie's just about a guy who comes back from Iraq. At that time, we were going to war. And the Saddam Hussein, and the idea of him finding gold in Saddam Hussein's caves, and guys overhear it and they're desperate, and it speaks a lot of what's happening in America. And they take him, and they basically hijack him, jump him at night, and take him and try to torture him to find out where the money is. And through that experience, you start finding the dark side of the human soul. Anyways, that movie I'm very proud of that movie. It went to a lot of film festivals. Some of the actors won some awards. Went to smaller film festivals, but it was a small little movie. I did that movie in like 12 days. 35 mil. And I was very happy with that. So that is more like me, Dark Heart.
Right.
You got Dark Heart and The Method. Downward Angel's an action movie. Malibu is not me, or whatever. And so those are the films that really speak to me, again, about the drama. And I just love the idea of psychology and what makes us tick, so.
You made an interesting comment about it reflecting America, but there's some sort of, what do you see our role as filmmakers in terms of society, in terms of how we show and what we show in our films? Because you say, Malibu, it's got a TNA movie, it's not you, etc. But what I'm struggling to express
I
is,
understand.
how do you see?
Well, we're all storytellers. And I also think that, you have a duty as a storyteller to, again, when we talk about write what you know, right? So I can make a movie and it could be just my point of view, and there's other points of view, right? But that's mine. And that's what I know. I think that, we filmmakers do have you can't just go willy-nilly and do whatever you want or whatever, again. But then you have a movie like A Clockwork Orange, right, where Kubrick, they totally misunderstood that movie, and that movie, they started blaming that film for the violence and things like that. And I guess he was part of it to shut it down. He was one of it to say, wanted it to be in the UK, they not to play it, right? And he was getting death threats and things like that. And so, but Clockwork Orange is one of my favorite films of all time, and I don't blame Clockwork Orange on someone watching it and then they're going to go commit mass violence. I think it's a commentary on violence in society. So you could twist things, right? But I think the filmmaker always has to come in with a point of view. because the characters should have a point of view, or where's the story going, right? The character, so the filmmaker needs to come with a point of view of like what story they're trying to tell. And I'm not a big fan of hitting you over the head with things. These things to me are subtle. I think that there's a point where I don't want to lecture and preach. That's not me. There's other great filmmakers that do that. And that may come off bad, lecture and preach. But it's just the idea of like, there's great filmmakers that come out and they have something to say. Spike Lee, right? But he's a great filmmaker, man, and I love his movies. So he's great. He's really good at that, But for me, I do like entertaining, right? But I like kind of sticking the subtext under the entertainment a little bit, So for me, every movie has kind of a theme, even if I'm not sharing it. Saying, "Oh, Willy's Wonderland." You could say, "Willy's Wonderland is just a fun, just crazy movie." Whatever, really, is just a dumb movie. But really, it's about a guy who does what he says, right? He says he's going to clean the place, and he does. And what happens is these guys mess with him, and things go out of hand, and he just wants to clean the place and get his car. So you can look at a lot of different things, but I think filmmakers definitely have a responsibility. Their point of view to get across, and yeah, there's a lot of things that are going on. It's never settled. There's always some fight out there, right? That we have to go, because I think that's us humans, right? We're never satisfied. We're never content. There's got to be right? There's something there that we're pushing, and it gets back to why we're here and what makes us tick. So there's something that we're pushing there to find out more about ourselves. So yeah. That's what filmmaking is about, is the human condition in my book. Every movie we watch and make, it's about HELLRAISER, NIGHTBREED, even that. It's the darkness, right? There's so much going on in those kind of movies, and they're horror movies, but there's horror is up here, right? And what you don't see is what's scarier than what you see in my book, Yeah,
well, yeah, look at cat people. And yeah, the shadows, and yeah, brilliant, absolutely fabulous. Now, let's properly talk about Willy's Wonderland.
Yeah,
I watched it today, and I was blown away by. I mean, there's lots of things I want to unpick. Let's start with how it all came about, because it started as a script on Bloodlist. Is that right?
Yes. And the writer, Geo Parsons, wrote a great script. It was on Bloodlist. And I told you the producer, Jeremy Davis, his wife, Jessica, who plays Siren Sarah, by the way, she's fabulous in the movie. And she was in an acting class with Geo, and she got the script and took it to Jeremy, and they liked it, and they optioned it, and they worked on it, and they brought it to me. And when I saw it, I just fell in love with it. I'm a big collector at heart. Like I said, I love comic books. I love action figures. I love 80s vintage. I love Sam Raimi and Evil Dead. I mean, all that stuff makes me tick. And when I read that script, it all came out vintage, and it's not vintage of like, well, we have to put on Ghostbuster outfits or whatever. We make our own 80s vibe, and it doesn't take place in the 80s. But that's when I read it, what I want to inject in it, right? And I wanted to make a fun movie. These times are hard with COVID and things like that. Even though we made the movie before COVID, I think people need an escape a little bit. The older I get, I want more of an escape, So we talked about themes, and we talked about, movies I made, a Dark Heart and things like that. I did make Dark Heart. I don't know if I want to make it again. I'm older now. I've got 4 kids. Like, life's rough sometimes, right? Like, I don't, even like with the method, I look at it and I'm like, gosh, that's just teen angst. That's just young man angst. But it's great because it's a moment in time, and that's how I was, and that's how I felt. But you evolve, right? Evolve or die.
Sure.
I really believe in that. And
Sure.
Kids really help you evolve,
Yeah. One thing I particularly like, apart from the whole 80s vibe about it, and the visuals are great. How long did it take you to shoot it?
I shot in 20 days.
Right. Okay. And basically, I guess you're more or less one location. Well, you've got the road, and then you've got the sheriff's office, and then you've got Willy's Wonderland. Did you use studio, or was it were you out on location?
Yeah, so the first week we did all the location scenes. Interesting, the first shot was the last shot where he hands her the punch pop. And then the other 3 weeks was all indoor location soundstage. So we built
Right.
that. The soundstage was like size of a football field. We had the bathroom and Siren Sarah's play play place and Tito's and all of it. It was just Fairy Forest, all of it. So we built everything there. So yeah.
Right. So, obvious question: what was Nicolas Cage like to work with?
Oh, he was fantastic. I mean, he loved the movie. He and I saw eye to eye on it the whole time. What a great partner, filmmaker, friend. I mean, he gives 110%. You know, he was never a guy that was in his trailer or whatever. He was there at the camera when we had to do a punch pop scene. He was there holding the punch pop there. You know, I mean, he's just fantastic.
Yeah, I have to. I mean, there are so many great images in this. So we'll talk about images, and then I want to talk about editing. But images in terms of like doing his nails with what appears to be sandpaper. Was that in the script?
No, so no. So we wanted to do something because I wanted to show how OCD this guy was, right, and things like that. So I remember telling the prop guy, "Hey, can you show me what props you got?" And he gave me like 15 of them. So we brought over to Nick, and I said, "Nick, what do you think?" And he said, "Sandpaper." I said, "Great, you know, so let's do that." So yeah, I just wanted to break it up because he does the drinking and the finball and stuff, but we want to do more, you know. So yeah, Nick was amazing, you know. One of my favorite moments in that movie is just, you know, when he would come to set, we'd have the camera set up and you'd hear the clump of the boots coming, you know, and it's like, man, when he came in to for the action, he manhandled those animatronics. I mean, he was there. He was ready to go. It was cool.
Right. I was going to say because he's not the youngest of men now, but he.
No, but he still got it, man. He's great. Yeah.
Right. So, how long did it take to get all the animatronics together? Or I mean, you've got guys inside costumes, I guess. For most of it, is mostly guys inside costumes.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Except Ozzy was a puppet. Okay. So we had someone operating. They were in the green screen smock, right? They were holding Ozzy. But everybody else was costumes. We started creating the costumes, the animatronic in November. Ken Hall did it, by the way. He's fantastic. He's known to do mascot suits and all kinds of fun stuff. And he did just a great job. So
Right.
we created them in November, and then Ken in November, December, January, and February, and like we started shooting the first week of February. So the second week of February, we needed the animatronics, so they came that weekend. So yeah, he took some time with it. It was great.
So this is February 2020.
Yes, it was February 2020.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, just before everything went. Yeah.
Nick, we finished shooting February 28th. I was home March 1st. And then LA shut down in like 10 days to 2 weeks after that. It was shut down. Yeah.
Right. Wow. So the other thing I mentioned was the editing. It's incredibly. I mean, the storytelling is very sparse. It is.
Yeah.
You just need this little piece of information. You've got the story. I'm not going to. Anytime
Yeah.
we're on to the next
Yeah.
thing. Was that kind of due to you directing, or was that baked into the script to begin with?
So I wrote like a 70-page shot list on the movie before we started. And I really adhered to that. I think at the end of the day, I got about 80 to 85% of it, you know, because I wanted to create, I knew, you know, going in, it's like I had to shoot the cut. I didn't have the time to go and let's try this out and this, that. I had to be very specific. And so we created things like Rage Cage, you know, that's every time he gets crazy with the animatronics. We would do like this, like 18 frames per second. Like we would shake the camera and we would like shine a flashlight in it, so you'd get the lens flares. You know, wanted to do. You know, originally I had an idea of doing like the punch pop, where he drinks the punch pop and the camera flies into him, and you see the punch pop go to the heart, and the heart. You know, I call it like a Popeye moment. You know, but of course, you know, 20 days indie film couldn't do that. But I try to break in sequences and try to do them very different from each other. So it's not just the same thing. Oh, here we go. Like everything's shot a little differently. And so yeah, just try to plan it that way. I storyboarded it off the shot list. And like I said, I kept pretty much to the shot list, you know.
Right, right, right.
Mm.
Now, the other film you've already mentioned is The Accursed, which
Yeah.
you just wrapped in Savannah. Um, Again, featuring Meg and Meg Foster, and also Sarah Gray, Sarah Dumont, Mina Savari, Alexis Kemp, and sorry, Alexis Knapp.
Mhm.
What was it like working with such a strong female cast?
Oh man, I loved it. It was they're those ladies are fantastic. You know, I grew up, like I said, my dad left when I was 3, so I was raised with my mother and my sisters and my grandmother. So it's like, to me, you know, strong females have always been in my life, and there's you know nothing stronger than those ladies, man. They're just amazing. Meg is such a class act and just a wonderful person, and she's really good in this movie. They're all good. They're all
Yeah.
good. You know, yeah.
Meg's a lovely lady. I've had a joy of meeting her a few times and but never worked with her. And I know one of the things that she is known for is almost going out of her body when she's
Yeah.
doing it, when she's acting. What is the experience like of working with an actor like that?
Well, it's very exciting, right? Because you plan on something, but then, you know, she come, like you said, out of body, like things happen. You're like, oh my God, that I didn't even think of that, you know? So there's only one Meg Foster. No one could do this part the way she did it, right? And it's funny because there were some times where a camera was on Alexis, because she has her scene with her, and then she's doing this stuff, and I'm like, whip the cam. I had 2 cameras. That was great because then I could get the camera on her. But she's so unpredictable, and you just want to film it all. You got to get it all right, because there's just those little moments. There's stuff in the opening sequence in this movie she does that wasn't even in the script. That's just fantastic, you know. She just brings her own energy and soul to it, you know, and makes it her own. I mean, she's just, yeah, I love working with her.
Right, 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 right. And you were filming in Savannah.
Yeah.
Is that a city that you knew?
Yeah. So Savannah, I mean, I guess it's like one of the most haunted capitals in America. It feels like it, with the Spanish moss and things. And we went there, you know, I shot Willie's in Atlanta, and so I knew Georgia pretty well, and we just felt like that was probably the best place to do this, to give the location its own character, its own feel, you know. So, and it worked really well in the movie.
Right, 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 right. So what else have you got on the books at the moment?
So I've got a, well, you know, I, again, talk about genre. I love genre. I'm really enjoying, you know, making this last film. So this film, if Willie's was just a fun kind of, you know, more like, you know, a B movie, 80s. This is definitely back to, like I said, The Omen and The Changeling and those kind of films. And so it's more of a dark heart vibe to this movie.
Right,
It's pretty intense. It takes itself seriously, but I really enjoyed doing it, you know. So
right.
I've got a couple more. I've got a project that's kind of like a Willy's Wonderland. I've got a really cool script that's kind of like The Thing, out in the country, that I want to do. So yeah, I've got some pretty
Right.
good stuff cooking.
And sorry, I apologize. I forgot to ask you. So with The Accursed, what's the plan for release? Where would people
The
be able to
good
see it?
news is it looks like it's coming out this Halloween of 2022. So it's a perfect Halloween movie.
Right, right. You've got distribution for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, okay, well, we're coming towards the end of our time together, but I did want to ask you the luggage in the crypt questions. So, I mean, basically the premise is we have this huge pyramid or whatever you like, and, you know, you can take whatever you like. What film would you take with you?
One movie,
Hmm.
2001. Yeah. It's just, that movie to me, again, like we talked about, it's like, why are we here? You know, what is the purpose of man? That movie just blows me away. And you can never make that movie now. I mean, if they made that movie now, it'd be Brad Pitt or George Clooney, the voice of Hal. You'd have the Star Child, a big VFX Marvel-like sequence, right? They cut the Dawn of Man sequence out. There'd be no Dawn of Man sequence, you know. I mean, that movie is just captured in time. There'll never be a movie like that ever again, you know. So 2001.
2001. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when did you first see it?
I saw that when I was like 10, I think like 10 years old. And I saw it every time I would come out here in LA in the Cinerama Dome. I went and saw it. I saw it at the ArcLight. I saw it at the Egyptian Movie Theater. I saw it every time. You know, anytime 70 millimeter, sign me up, you know?
Right. What about a book?
So one of my favorite books is Catcher in the Rye. I'd probably say Catcher in the Rye. Isn't that just a fabulous book? It's probably a cliche. There's so many both my things are 2001 and Catcher in the Rye, but is there going to be another book like Catcher in the Rye ever? No, I don't think so.
I don't. Well, just the opening of Catcher, those first few pages, I remember just like, I understand this.
Right? It spoke to you here, right? Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. And in popular culture now, it's always recognized as one book that terrorists or serial killers struggle. And I just think, no, he's just a teenager. It's a book about a teenager
Going through what teenagers do. Absolutely. I mean, yeah.
What about music? What sort of music do you listen to?
I mean, I love like Brit pop, you know, so I could tell you, I love music. Music's one of my favorite things. So many great. I mean, I'm a huge Prince fan and U2 fan and Peter Gabriel. I guess if you talk about an album that I'd have to take, one album that I just adore is the Verve Urban Hymns. I just love that. I love Richard Ashcroft, so I'll just say the Verve Urban Hymns.
Okay, cool. And what about a favorite food or beverage?
Gosh, favorite food or beverage? Well, I mean, I definitely like my soda. I like Coca-Cola, so that's I know it's not good for you, but I do like that. So I'll say a Coke
Right.
with ice. I'm very square. I don't drink much. You know, I should say Guinness. You know, I
Right.
should say, but and then yeah, that's so I like beverage more than food. I always have. I like a little cold drink. You know, it just gets me through the day, and non-alcoholic cold drink. But and then you know, for food, gosh, that's a good question too. I mean, a good steak is fantastic. You know, I mean,
Okay. That's very good. What about a piece of visual art, a painting or sculpture?
oh my gosh, that's a good question too. Um, I mean, I love Rothko. Um, uh, gosh, what was there a painting that I would really love? Renoir is amazing. You know, oh, God, there's so many fantastic. Um,
Well, it's interesting. What you mentioned, Mark Rothko. What is it particularly that attracts you to Rothko's?
the minimalism and just the colors, the blends that he does, and what you can see in it. To me, you just see something different every time. You know, Jackson Pollock too, same thing. You know, there's so many good ones though. The American flag, right? Oh man, there's so many good ones. Yeah. I mean, rather than an individual piece of art, I'd probably say just Rothko. I love it all.
Right. That's
And
fair
Pollock.
enough.
I love Pollock too. I love Pollock too. So, you
Right.
know, Renoir, you know, they're all, you know,
Okay, so right.
Nick, you see those people, those artists, and it's just like the Beatles when I watched this documentary on Get Back, and you just go, why am I even doing this? Because they're guys that are working out so outside the box, right? When you watch the Beatles and you're like, I mean, is there any greatest band ever? You know, so yeah.
Interesting. But I do love this image. We'll give you a gallery on one side. On one wall, we have all the Rothkos. On the other, we have all the Jackson Pollocks, and then the Renoirs are at the far end. Yeah,
I'll take
yeah, yeah.
it.
That makes
Mhm.
perfect sense to me. What about now? Is there a luxury, something you've kind of mentioned, cold drinks, etc. But is there anything else, just something, an item kind of not covered, just that's personal to you that you'd always want to have with you?
I mean, gosh. I mean, I'm a huge collector. So I collect from Blu-rays and steel books. Yeah, of physical media. I collect vinyl. I collect, like I say, action figures and comics. So I love all that stuff. That stuff really gets me through. Posters, you know. If there's one item, and that's a really good question. Um, it's funny. The older I get, I realize though, like we can't take it with you, right? So if I said just one item, I mean, it's just really my kids and my wife, the memories of what I've had with them. I don't know if you know this, but I was in the hospital with COVID for like 2 weeks. I almost died. It was a year ago, February, like right before Willie's came out, and that really set a lot of things straight in my life, what's important and things like that. And I had 2 blood polyps in my heart, and my oxygen was like 82%. It was bad news, Nick. I'm so glad to be here and so glad to make this movie that I did, because I didn't know if I was going to survive it, you know?
Wow. Wow. No,
Yeah.
I'd not heard about that at all.
Yeah.
Gosh. Well, wonderful.
I did, I wrote an article, if you want, and any listeners want to, to me, I wrote it for if people don't believe in COVID, or they think, like, just read this article. It's on IndieWire. You can just do Kevin Lewis IndieWire and it'll come up. But I felt like if I could just change one person's, opinion of this terrible, terrible disease, then it would be worth doing. So I did that.
Yeah, and it's a real struggle. I know it's a real struggle over there. It's a real
Yeah.
struggle over here. We have
Yeah.
exactly the same, we've had demonstrations, and you just think you're putting this, for some people, it appears
Yeah.
that they're putting this concept of freedom above health, above other people's health. And it's so difficult to talk to that mindset. So I look forward to reading this article with
Yeah.
interest, because
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, that's an extraordinary note. I didn't expect us to end on that note this evening, but that's great.
But it's a great note because I beat it and I'm here and I made another movie after it. So it's awesome. And you can too. Anybody that's listening to this has suffered through this, or feel, the power of the mind, the power of the heart, the will. I willed to live, man. I
Yeah,
did. I did not want to give up. I did everything I was told to do, proning and everything else. I just fought, and I fought hard, and I'm here. So you can too.
right. Wonderful. Kevin, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Nick. Great
Yeah,
time.
thank you. Take care. My thanks again to Kevin Lewis. What a fascinating chat that was. And if you'd like to read that article about surviving COVID, just check the link in the description on either YouTube or your podcast platform. We return on January the 13th, when I'll have another guest from the world of horror, thriller, and suspense. And in the meantime, enjoy your Christmas or New Year celebration or whatever you're celebrating. And seriously, stay safe and well.